Traders put almost $180 million into ARK Innovation's ETF, ARKK, in the 5-day period ended Friday, the most since it began trading in 2014. What does this essentially say? Well, a lot of investors have been tracking what's going on with ARK in general.
Roku exposure right now is in an ETF with ARK, the ARK Innovation Fund. They have some exposure to Roku, so I'm not completely missing out if this thing does a colossal 180 of some kind. All right, guys.
Been no Bitcoin in the ARK Innovation ETF for more than a year and a half. How come?
Yes, well, we put it in at a 1% position in 2015 when Bitcoin was $250. And we scaled with it. We didn't sell it at all. So it hit 10% of the portfolio, at which point we were forced to sell.
She bought 11 million shares from July when the stock exploded. Smaller purchases in the past when the stock was much lower. So when the stock started exploding, also Wood started buying. Perhaps something.
It's a very great pick for a long-term stock. Number 5 on my list is ARK Innovation ETF, stock ticker ARKK. This one's a little bit different than my other picks, as this is not a single company stock. Rather, this is an exchange-traded fund that has multiple high innovation companies. That means it should give you great growth potential, and their 1-year daily total return is 182.26%. ARK Innovation ETF is a fund led by Cathie Wood, an experienced investor who in the past year has blown people away with the performance of her funds. ARKK isn't the only ETF that she oversees. In fact, she has many other ones, including ARKG, ARKW, ARKF, and more. All have
60-40 allocations. Wood says, is it Cathie Wood or what Wood? Who's talking right now? And where? Does anybody know? Miners Crossing the Border is on Fox.
That one declining 22%, as you said, after hours. Still ahead, Cathie Wood's ARK Innovation ETF slipping nearly 30% over the last month. She joined us earlier in the show with her outlook for Tesla, a key investment, of course, of hers that has struggled lately. We will revisit some of those comments next.
Okay.
Through how her ETFs performed on the day.
Yeah, you know, the ARK Innovation ETF having its worst run of weekly decline since a year ago when the pandemic first unfolded. And as you say, really, this is about names like Tesla, which are the biggest holdings within that ETF. You can see there it's down 30%, again, from a Feb 12 peak. Really. And history has shown that those that bet against Cathie Wood don't tend to do particularly well. Emily.
All right, Ed, thank you so much. Let's continue writing those history books.
That's cool. They let you follow along.
ETF performance and the volatility the market is seeing right now. We've got Cathie Wood herself with us.
Yet the past few weeks have been absolutely brutal. The ARK Innovation ETF down 31% from the recent highs. How concerned are you about these rising interest rates and what that's doing to a lot of your high growth companies and the questions about valuations?
Sure. Well, we've been struck that the market never priced in zero.
Led the jump with Tesla rallying more than 5% and ARK Innovation surging. A smaller advance for the Dow Jones brought it to a near record. Let's look at
months, up nearly 700%. Tesla is ARK Innovation's biggest holding, making up more than 10% of the fund. But Mike, I actually think the comments about Tesla's data and the security of that data is particularly important, especially given the fact that you did see the Chinese military last week.
Next niche. ETF to attract inflows akin to the ARK Innovation ETF. Oh, but it's like the opposite. So Cathie Wood mentioned, which was Cathie Wood just said she expects inflation to revert down after 3 to 4 months, maybe 6 months of higher inflation. Couldn't agree more. Let's continue on. Some of the other things Cathie Wood mentioned here. She's had a few great things to say. She believes $1 trillion for
all of these finance bros. I love Cathie Wood. If you need to get her on, I am so excited for that moment for you, Kevin.
I can't wait. I'm looking forward to that as well. One day. But
I want to talk to you guys about ARK Innovation's top 10 holdings. I saw this funny little tweet talking about the drops from their all-time highs, and I wanted to sort of explain what's happening and maybe give my own opinion on it. Now, just before we get started, although I am actually a licensed financial security advisor,
ETF, it was similar to ARK, ARKK, the ARK Innovation ETF, and just parabolic moves last year that continued into this year. And it's since broken. You've seen notable outflows. You've seen a breakdown in price and a big drawdown.
And third largest position in the ETF. So also Cathie Wood is bullish on Baidu. I have seen some price targets of Asian value investors, and they see Baidu at 360, 370 as a price target. So there is 50% upside in Wall Street terms. And also if Cathie owns it, then she sees more than 15%, which also represents an opportunity. If I can get Cathie Wood upside and a margin of safety, cash, free cash flows, then that is a value investment for me, because you can get the good of both worlds. It's already Cathie Wood's 15%, and the rest, what you get is for free then. Talking about the rest, the top company with artificial intelligence patents in China is Baidu, followed by Tencent, Huawei, and others. So they are really investing and have been investing for a long time,
which we're going to look at now. This is from the ARK Innovation ETF, ARKK. This is where they have the write-up. Now, the first thing I'll mention is it has 5 stars because that's based on an algorithm that compares the previous performance of this fund against its peers, against other funds. It was Robbie Greengold, the analyst that did this. We'll start off. ARK Innovation ETF, ARKK, has been in tune with the market's unfolding narrative in recent years, but its lone portfolio manager, inexperienced team, and lacks risk controls make it ill-prepared to grapple with a major plot twist.
Say, except against interest rates. This right here is a very Cathie Wood argument that, look, markets have not priced in the fact that we are going to have lower interest rates for the long term, even after temporary inflation, even after the Fed increases the Fed funds rate, which is currently at 0%, even if that goes back to 1.5% for growth stocks going forward. It's a very Cathie Woodian argument. Many people obviously do not agree with Cathie Wood. Now, clearly, Jamie Dimon goes on to say, clearly there is some froth and speculation in parts of the market. He refers to a line from Casablanca. I'm shocked to find that gambling is going on in.
2 free, Snapchat has 37. If Cathie Wood picks it up that we have a growing emerging market platform with huge...
That's what's getting hit as well. The ARK Innovation ETF down 3.4% in the close level.
Welcome to the Closing Bell, everyone. I'm Wilfred Frost, along with Sarah Eisen and Mike Santoli, CNBC senior markets commentator, finishing down 0.5% on the S&P 500, a full percent on the Nasdaq, about 1/3 of 1% on the Dow.
Down, Matterport's down, but then again, that's with the SPACs. ARK Innovation down 2.8%. Tesla moving down 2.5%.
Looking worse at some parts of the day, but has pretty much been lower all day.
But it's interesting because if you look at ARK's flagship fund, ARK Innovation, it turns out it pretty much tracks a Goldman Sachs index of money-losing companies. And that's just not just, that's more than just looking at the lines. I actually ran a 30-day correlation. You've got numbers 0.68 to 0.98. One means
limits on Chinese investments. And Cathie Wood's ARK Innovation ETF slides another 3% as inflation fears take hold of investors. Coinbase plunges to its lowest level since last month's IPO.
High flyers starting to fall. So we have Cathie Wood's fund here, the ARK Innovation Funds in the white. It had done really good, starting to fall. But strangely enough, real yields are also starting to fall. You'd think that lower picture would help bring growth appetite back in. And Francine, that's where we get this picture that
the ARK Innovation Complex down, that ETF down more than 5%. The Russell 2000 Index of small caps down 2.6% on the day. Investors are now set for another busy hour of earnings. After the bell, we'll have instant analysis.
Affirm.
Results from Wynn, Roblox, first time since going public.
Of the Schwab US Dividend Equity ETF, you have the ARK Innovation Fund, right? The ARK Innovation ETF, this is their flagship one. It's currently down 15% year to date. Now, of course, we have the year view and it's up doing really well, but investors that are buying this recently a lot of them bought it right here towards the a more traditional ETF, when we have the ARK Innovation Fund that has crushed those over the past year.
That big tech sell-off, one of the poster children of it yesterday was the ARK Innovation ETF, Cathie Wood's flagship fund. It tracks a lot of high growth, high momentum names, and all but 5 of the 58 holdings in that ETF were down yesterday. The ETF itself down more than 5%. And once again, in pre-market trading, it's lower by more.
From those Peloton tread recalls. Next, Cathie Wood's ARK Innovation ETF. This has really been a barometer for those high growth tech groups, which is getting hit today as fears of inflation and higher rates creep up. The ETF is down slightly today. Yesterday, the ETF did see its worst performance since March and its 9th.
Once again, we see Cathie Wood's ARK Invest, the ARK Innovation ETF, ARKK, the main ETF within the suite of products offered by ARK, off some 5% in pre-market trading. ARKK is now down right around 40% from its highs. And you look at some of the biggest components.
We've been watching closely is what happens with the ARK Innovation ETF. It has been under immense pressure this year as some of those momentum names fall out of favor, but with a little bit of a rebound in big tech this morning, that is higher by 1.4% in pre-market trading. And then, as we were just discussing, Amazon potentially looking to buy film. Also lower. And the ARK Innovation ETF, this is an interesting one. Cathie Wood, of course, a crypto bull and a Tesla bull. She used the opportunity to buy the dip yesterday in Coinbase and Tesla. Those were added to some of her exchange-traded funds, but one of them, that ARK Innovation ETF.
You don't need to install solar panels on your roof, whatever Cathie Wood said that we will use to mine bitcoins, etc., etc. And then again, she said that 50% of the mining in China is from renewables. So if I buy a bitcoin, I'm sending my money to someone that's using Chinese electricity to mine a bitcoin. That's a great investment thesis. Things so risky bets, and risky bet is also ARK Innovation. Everybody excited when the price went up, but as it was again a flow issue, then you see what happens when the flow reverts. And I've made a few videos in December about ARK, so you can see more about all about the flows. Invesco versus Berkshire in the 1990s, and look at ARK Innovation versus Berkshire today. So flows, no intrinsic value there. And then when it reverts again.
And that's why Cathie Wood likes this, because now it's an entire ecosystem. Now, of course, we do need to keep in mind that the journey is going to be really volatile. So when crypto is down 4 or 5%, you'll see the company is down by 6 or 7%.
We'll look at a few factors that I believe are making Cathie Wood even more bullish on innovation than usual, and then we'll ask the big question. Should we really be this confident in ARK Invest?
Here, what's NEO doing? NEO's got a little bit of a move here. Nice. ARK Innovations up about 1.2%. Awesome. Yeah, Tesla's sitting around that 2% level. Having a hard time.
Many, if not most, of the companies in, say, the ARK Innovation ETF, these are companies that are just going for it, right? That's the thesis underpinning those investments. Spend whatever it takes to create a total addressable, even if you don't even know what the TAM is. Spend whatever it takes to create a TAM, and somewhere down
a positive 12% change over the quarter. That means Cathie Wood's ARKK bazooka is about 12% bigger. ARKG, the genomics fund, is ending the quarter up almost 4% in assets.
Yeah, Cathie's been getting screwed. 99 anything in RS. You know, that's funny. I was just looking at a video of when I hit 99 range. I had it somewhere. I don't think I'd be able to get it.
Sell them. We think that's a mistake.
Cathie Wood, thank you very much. Vinay Nair, thank you as well for joining us from Tiffin, and congrats again on the new addition to your board. Thank you both.
Bank of America didn't make the list.
No, definitely.
Already had their move down, and we don't have to worry about that.
ARK Innovation, by the way, is a bright spot in the sell-off. Cathie Wood's ETF up about 1/4%, thanks to some of her.
So there's a clear change, and it's not just an ARK Innovation either. You've seen that in the ARK Next Generation Internet down to 5.4%. That's lower than any month end based on our data since October 2014. So, you know, I mean, it's not all the funds. ARK FinTech Innovation still has around 18% of its assets in China, or Cathie Wood. Because, you know, you look at the ARK Innovation shares, I mean, they peaked back in February. They were down more than 30% through mid-May. And since then, they've managed to come back, even as, you know, the Chinese companies listed in the U.S. have kind of been suffering.
Now, and almost all of them are in ARKW. In my opinion, that means Cathie Wood has greatly increased conviction in internet companies relative to genomics and healthcare companies, both of which compete for dollars in ARKK. So if you're looking for new stocks to research, I'd be looking at things like digital wallets, e-commerce, same -8% number. So Cathie Wood's top 5 biggest overall buys for the month are UiPath, ticker symbol PATH, Twitter, TWTR, Unity Software, ticker symbol U, Coinbase, COIN, and DraftKings, DKNG.
If you're the biggest holders of this stock is actually the ARK Innovation Fund, ticker symbol ARKK. Cathie Wood's fund holds 13.6 million shares, in fact, over that, and we'll see if she's bought the dip over the last couple days, but that's over $186 million worth of Skill stock. Look, this company is worth $5.87 billion.
This week in February, they began aggressively loading up on this stock. Today, Cathie Wood is holding over $1.25 billion of Unity software across ARKK, ARKW, ARKQ, and ARKX.
Assets when you look at her flagship ARK Innovation ETF. And, you know, what's interesting there, I mean, you know, track the year. It's been quite the volatile period, you know, considering the shares set a record in February, fell as much as 39% in the next 3 months, and they've really struggled to come back since then.
High risk, just short Cathie Wood. Oh, man. Oh, gosh. Yeah, generally you do not want to bag hold a momentum stock. You could be holding that bag for a very long time.
Almost like when we buy ARK Innovation, I'm basically owning a slice of tech stocks. That's the way I look at it. You know, the one ARK fund we use actually at my firm is ARKF, the fintech fund, because it's just the perfect exposure for those. We like that exposure, but like the PE ratio of ARK Innovation or ARK FinTech is like 10,000. You know, like there's no PE ratio. Like Cathie Wood does not believe in earnings. None of her companies really have earnings. You know. It's like that whole concept is foreign at ARK. ARK is purely an intellectual firm where if they like what you're doing, they'll buy your stock. And that's it. So the reward has been great, but the risk is equally high. And I think that's the difference is like ARK is down on the year.
Or what's gonna evolve next. So this also suggests that in the short term, Cathie Wood is probably quite bearish on the Chinese market. But in the medium to long term, I think she still holds quite a fair bit of interest in investing in the Chinese market particularly. And lastly, talking about SoftBank. So I'm not here to discuss what SoftBank's strategy is, whether their spray and pray strategy.
ARK funds, specifically, well, ARKK, ARK Innovation. In fact, if we go to let's go to the year-to-date chart on ARKK here, we could see just above my head here, this chart showing ARKK basically going from next to no short to as high as 13.86% short at one point. Presently, put contract against 235,000 shares of ARK Innovation. Wood said in her tweet that she doesn't think Burry understands the fundamentals that are creating explosive growth and investment opportunities in the innovation space.
235,500 shares of ARK Innovation ETF. That's the ARK fund, guys. At the end of the second quarter, this is their main fund. 235,500 shares, bearish put contracts, according to a regulatory filing on Monday.
That he's betting against Cathie Wood's ARK Innovation ETF. So not only is Michael Burry still short on Tesla, which is surprising. He actually doubled down on his short position on Tesla, but now he's betting against the ARK Innovation ETF as a whole. Asset purchases, Michael Burry betting against these type of companies. There's just a lot of macroeconomic going up. It's pretty incredible. Meanwhile, the ARK Innovation ETF is actually in the red by 7% this year.
And Cathie Wood's backing of JD.com. Now joining us to talk everything markets, and I mean everything markets, is Eddie van der Veld from our MLive team. Eddie, first, I know you want to talk about gold. I know we have stuff on cryptocurrency to talk about, but actually...
literally doubled down on over the last month. The surprise here is that Cathie Wood has this stock in ARKG, ARK Invest's fund themed around the genomics revolution, but not ARKW or ARKF, the two funds that focus on value transfer and risk transformation like the companies I just talked about. Signify Health is a platform that leverages advanced analytics, technology, and nationwide over the next few years. I don't typically cover Cathie Wood's smaller positions because they can shift pretty quickly and are
placing millions of put contracts against Cathie Wood's ARK Innovation ETF. She hit back, said Burry doesn't understand the explosive growth in innovation investing right now.
Many investors, I'm sure, think, okay, well, we've seen the destruction there. We think it's just begun. A lot of industries are in harm's way. I don't think the market's ready for this. We've never been at a more provocative.
Placing millions of put contracts against Cathie Wood's ARK Innovation ETF. The fund grew a whopping 149% in 2020. This year down just about 6%. She hit back, said Burry doesn't understand the explosive growth in innovation investing right now. ARK
Tech Innovation Fund until the start of May. By May 18th, Cathie Wood had dropped Apple completely. Why this sudden drop? Well, if we go look at the price action for some of ARK Invest's biggest positions around the middle of May, guess what we find? Everything from Tesla and Teladoc to Palantir and UiPath was trading at a steep discount. In fact, Invest has just under $200 million in Mercado Libre, making it Cathie Wood's 52nd biggest position overall.
Thinks is going to lead up to a growth sector rotation. Cathie Wood making a bold prediction? Who would have thunk that? But I think you're going to like what she has to say.
What the heck is going on out there? Why is the market so skittish, particularly around growth stocks? But we are looking forward to the next rotation.
Yesterday, because at the same time you have Cathie Wood's ARK Innovation is going to be going to St. Petersburg, Florida, out of New York City, closing their offices. And we were talking about how the financial drain and how they're leaving in different locations and how you get them back. What would need to happen to do that?
Well, I guess London is facing an
$1 billion combined. On October 1st, just before market open, Cathie Wood's combined funds had under $38 billion in them, marking a That's why I was so surprised to find out that both Cathie Wood and Warren Buffett are invested in the same stock. Well, that company is called StoneCo, or Stone, and its ticker symbol is STNE. Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway purchased about 14 million shares of Stone back when it IPO'd in October of 2018. That amounted to about 8% of the company and one of the indicators of economic decline. Unlike most people, Cathie Wood thinks that all this extra inventory isn't necessarily because of an oncoming recession, but because businesses double and triple ordered their inventories due to the surge of demand and lack of supply that came with the pandemic and the shutdowns. So now businesses have a ton of items they can't move. Not finance in a nutshell. Most people think that there's a recession coming in general. Cathie Wood thinks it's the decline of gas-powered vehicles specifically. Comment below or tweet me at ticker symbol U with your thoughts on the current state of the legacy auto market. Do you drive a gas-powered vehicle or an electric vehicle today? Is your next vehicle going to be gas-powered or electric? Did you
bridge the gap that Apple has created? So I think that Cathie Wood is making the bet that, hey, these companies aren't going to be in their mini adpocalypses forever. She's also been buying a lot of Triple D as of late, which has been stagnating, at least in price. This is also one of my favorite 3D printing companies. Yes, they haven't.
What we're going to see is Palantir in the ARK Innovation ETF. It's their 14th biggest position. They have over $576 million worth of shares. And this is even after the stock's gone down, right?
Path, ticker symbol PATH. With a combined total in all of ARK Innovation's funds, we have a weighting of 3.39%, which makes it their 5th biggest holding. And actually, a cool tidbit is that of only 2 companies in all of ARK Invest that actually land in all 6 funds, UiPath is one of them that has a spread in every single one, including their space fund. UiPath
over 700% since inception. People who think Cathie Wood is anything but an incredible portfolio manager are absolutely delusional. No exceptions. Speaking of which, ARKW has $5.5 billion in it in terms of assets under management. But don't let that fool you. The Meta ETF is already 50% bigger than ARKX, ARK Invest's newest fund themed around space exploration. You know what that means, don't you? It means that if Cathie Wood is right and ARKK's share price quadruples over the next 5 years, it would actually be worth $420.69. 50% of its portfolio concentrated within its top 9 investments. Many of these investments are uniquely focused on a single industry or customer market like Zoom, Coinbase, and Unity. That means
they can't really shoot against her, but her flagship ARK Innovation ETF, ARKK, was down more than 5% today. That raises eyebrows. I get why people are scared, but let me tell you how I see this. Going into today, DocuSign was trading at roughly 130 times earnings, at least not sales, for heaven's sake. Its collapse creates a puzzling environment where all sorts of skills.
Cathie, your flagship ARK Innovation ETF, which I referenced earlier, had another rough day. It's down 25% in the past month. What is going on? You and I have talked before about the reality and risk of corrections. How much worse could this innovation sell-off get?
We're looking at the performance here of the ARK Innovation ETF, down 14% in the past 1 year versus the S&P 500's up 28%.
Some of those, ARK Innovation ETF names being absolutely crushed, and then you have FXI and it's down 18%. You're like, oh, that's just a walk in the park. That's no biggie here, Guy.
Money was December 3rd, I believe it was a Friday. On that day, Alibaba traded down to 108.70 on about 70 million shares.
We should get this for our set. But, I mean, you talk about some of the high flyers. You talk about the ARK Innovation ETF. That was, of course, the big winner last year, and it's down pretty significantly this year. But when you look at what we've seen just over the past couple of months, ARK Innovation down something like 20%. The Renaissance IPO ETF, which tracks IPOs, which, again, the bloom has come off the rose of that. That's down something like 17, 18%. And, of course, we all know what's happened to crypto here over the last couple of weeks. So the riskiest assets out there are starting to see a little bit more.
No. Look at ARK's fund today, right? ARKK, ARK Innovation ETF, has been absolutely decimated recently. And it has a 5% upward move here today for an ETF. An ETF up over 5% today. Okay, that's quite a move there, right?
Speculative growth-focused names, whether that's, the ARK Innovation Fund, Plug Power, they have fled those names. And at the same time, we've obviously seen stocks like Apple outperform. And I think it goes back to, some of those growth-focused, unprofitable names have taken a beating lately as the
only increased by 14%. As a result, Cathie Wood's total position in Tesla stock got cut in half.
Going to change. Now, touching on what Cathie Wood just said, and again, just because it's Cathie Wood does not mean that it will happen 100%, just so we're clear. So although she acknowledges that we are now in an inflationary environment, she fears deflation going forward.
That is the ARK complex, a bunch of ETFs there, including the biggest ARK Innovation Fund run by Cathie Wood, which had some pretty poor performance this year after a blockbuster 2020. How did that affect flows and the overall mood around ETFs?
Well, it actually didn't impact it at all. ARKK saw strong inflows despite the underperformance. But what ARK
down to an insignificant amount within her flagship ETF, the ARK Innovation Fund.
The coronavirus crisis, when it hit, it was clear to me that the headlines that people were reading, generally, both investors and the general public, were
in the coal mine, which I look at as ARK Innovation. That's still going lower, and until that stops going lower, I think there's still probably a little too much speculation in the market.
How about those?
About some of the things. So really, I was kind of inspired by Cathie Wood's weekly update, where she really talked about some of the supply chain issues and some.
Flagship ARK Innovation Fund has fallen from $156 a share down to today of $71 a share. That's a drop of over 54% in just 1 year. Notoriously stern on the idea that deflation is the direction that the American economy is headed. This, however, has proven dramatically incorrect as inflation.
They did a good job. This is the anti-Cathie Wood. Basically, let the stock come down.
Who's the anti-Cathie Wood? What?
Hey, well, no, I'm saying the DraftKings upgrade today makes sense to me. Down to 20. It fully now discounts the fact that New York is not that great. Now, obviously, the deals to open accounts are just horrible for their bottom line.
As bets against Wood's ARK Innovation Fund are compounding with short interest as a percentage of her outstanding shares at a record of 9.4%. According to Bloomberg, which first noted the filing of the TARK fund, that Tuttle Capital's Short Innovation ETF, which bets against Wood's fund, launched last year. Now, what they're talking about is this fund, actually, the SARK. Those anti-ARK bets have paid off recently. The ARK Innovation ETF, which has big stakes in companies like Tesla, Zoom, and Coinbase, have slumped over 24% in the new year and is down over 55% from its highs amongst a mid-market sell-off that has hit tech stocks hard.
Let me introduce you to the ARK, more specifically the ARK Innovation ETF, which is run by Cathie Wood, the best money manager of 2020, albeit not 2021 and probably not 2022. Now, Wood owns, this is the ARK, okay? Wood owns a ton of textbook growth names, Tesla, Teladoc, Zoom Video, Roku, Coinbase, Exact Sciences, Unity Software, Spotify, Neil Young, UiPath, Intellia Therapeutics. That timing's hard. I have a brutal solution for you. The ARK Innovation Fund is listing down 30% for the year. See, this is my ARK Innovation, right? And it had another drubbing today. If you think it's headed further down, the cynical geniuses who prey on investors in the form of ETFs have come up with a way to bet against Cathie Wood herself. It's called the Tuttle Capital. Let me introduce you to the ARK, more specifically the ARK Innovation ETF, which is run by Cathie Wood, the best money manager of 2020, albeit not 2021 and probably not 2022. Now, Wood owns, this is the ARK, okay? Wood owns a ton of textbook growth names, Tesla, Teladoc, Zoom Video, Roku, Coinbase, Exact Sciences, Unity Software, Spotify, Neil Young. That timing's hard. I have a brutal solution for you. The ARK Innovation Fund is listing down 30% for the year. See, this is my ARK Innovation, right? And it had another drubbing today. If you think it's headed further down, the cynical geniuses who prey on investors in the form of ETFs have come up with a way to bet against Cathie Wood herself. It's called the Tuttle Capital.
SARK, the anti-ARK ETF that serves as a shorting tool for the ARK Innovation Fund, saw its largest single-day net inflow on Tuesday of this week, adding $92 million more in new cash and boosting the fund to a total of $334 million that fund is up to now. She's out there buying it again. We know right now there's like record amounts of folks that are basically short Cathie Woods through the SARK, essentially.
To the conversation we started the show with the ARK Innovation names. At some point, these things are going to bounce. The question is, do you want to step in here?
That's the thing. I mean, in IBB, obviously, I think IBB right now, 9% of it is now comprised by Moderna. But if you look at the sell-off, and we've talked about it, I didn't think you'd get down to the 160s, but here.
V-shaped bounce backs. We were just talking about the ARK Innovation ETF, and I'm wondering if you also see the sort of violent bounce back for these names that are just absolutely bombed out. And I know you're not an individual stock picker, but names of this ilk.
Yes, Mark Newton, our technical strategist, actually.
I like the position. Third ARK Innovation holding, really quizzical. Teladoc. We keep hearing that there's intense competition in the telemedicine space. Yeah, when I ask people who they use, they almost always say Teladoc because it's got a great array of good doctors from all different kinds of verticals. Last month, they spoke at Lisa Gill's JP Ultimate Hedge. Let me introduce you to the ARK, more specifically the ARK Innovation ETF, which is run by Cathie Wood, the best money manager of 2020, albeit not 2021 and probably not 2022. Now, Wood owns, this is the ARK, okay? Wood owns a ton of textbook growth names, Tesla, Teladoc, Zoom Video, Roku, Coinbase. It's kind of a curious amalgam of animals, pandemic plays, cryptocurrency.
Days later, quote, Jim Cramer says he likes most of the ARK Innovation ETF's top holdings after the growth stock meltdown. CNBC's Jim Cramer said Tuesday that he likes the setup in most of the largest positions in Cathie Wood's ARK Innovation ETF, ARKK, Tesla, Teladoc, Zoom Video, Roku, and Coinbase.
And what that has had on some of these areas like ARK Innovation, for instance. You have to also acknowledge on the way out when the liquidity is coming out that this trade may not get back. But for traders, it doesn't need to get back to those levels. If you're in now, you could still see a 50% bounce.
100 is going to be the single best trade. Forget the ARK Innovation ETF. You buy the QQQ because you're going to get these massive companies that have corrected 20, 30%, and they're going to be the leaders on the way out. But then to Mel's point, you're going to get the dozens of stocks that are truly innovative, but their valuations got way out of whack.
$320 a share to $118. Look at the ARK Innovation Fund. Cathie Wood was up over $120 per share just a few months ago. Now it's at $60. Now, some people might wonder, is my strategy effective? What kind of strategy do I employ? Do I buy the dips all the time? And the answer to that is absolutely not. I do not consistently buy the dips. The reason for that is because in an uptrend, you can calmly buy the dip, but I'll show you here in a second that the markets might not be in an uptrend. In fact, technically, they're no longer in an uptrend. Sure. And could I miss out on a little bit of a move? Could the stocks rebound? Could inflation be overblown? Could our fears about in my IRA account? But we're keeping a very, very close eye on that because unlike a lot of people giving advice here on the channel, I've lived through the late 90s recession. I've lived through the
saying with investors right now, they're looking at a lot of stocks like the ARK Innovation ETF. It's down, from $155 to $64 a share, and other growth stocks. And they're saying, look at those stocks. They're trading at a price to sales of 543, and then they're growing 60-70% revenue. Why is that happening? Is the market drunk? The valuation don't matter? No, they're not understanding that $64, which tell me there's still some buy the dip in ARK Innovation. Now, for me, as long as ARK Innovation Fund is above $50, we are still not close to a bottom. When it goes under 50, this is when I think we are somewhat close to a bottom. Tesla stock, I know some of you own it that watch my channel. I have nothing against the stock. But again, in terms of fundamentals, the buy the dip
life at this point, if you take a look, for instance, at the ARK Innovation ETF, what do you think?
I would agree, Mel, and I haven't been playing Wordle like you guys, so.
It was flagship ARK Innovation ETF. Now, of course, it's down about 40% this year, but there are some investors that are starting to look at it and maybe pile in. The fund is seeing its 5th straight week of inflows. Joining us now, our Bloomberg cross-asset reporter, Isabel Lee. Who are these sort of inflows that we're seeing?
I would imagine it's not as big as let's say ARK Innovation, which was up, I don't know, it was 70% lower from its highs in February of last year.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a difference ultimately between the quality growth stocks and the junk, I'll call it. And I think you are going to see a snapback in growth as we move into the second half of the year. I've been talking about.
Well, I mean, you sound like Cathie Wood there. The ARK Innovation ETF is down more than 7% for the week. It had a big down day today, about 6% down day. It's now 60% off its highs versus the NASDAQ Composite, which is down about 3.5% for the week.
Here, I was putting out deep dives on many of the stocks that I saw Cathie Wood was buying up during these consolidation periods, like Teladoc, UiPath, Palantir, and DraftKings. Cathie Wood has bought and sold from December 15th through today. Let's start with the cash-like positions, which are these positions with the negative 100% in the change in shares column. Not all cash-like positions are created equal. For example, Cathie Wood sold out of Meta Platforms and Netflix and Snapchat. Each row is one company. The rows are ordered by the size of Cathie Wood's position in that company, change in size since Cathie Wood started consolidating down her funds in mid-December.
Like what you get if you put your money in Cathie Wood's ARK Innovation ETF, which is speculation all the way down. Before the Fed started cracking down on inflation, we considered these conceptual stocks. They might not make anything now, let alone make money or return capital to shareholders, but they had a vision of the future. Back then, Wall Street was willing to pay up for that vision.
Gets more expensive to borrow for all of them. So if Cathie Wood's goal was to make investors as much money as possible, concentrating solely into these kinds of growth companies would have been a $35 billion mistake, since her combined funds dropped from just under $60 billion in assets under management to under 25, and valuing that science pretty far out into the future. For example, they correctly valued Tesla at over $4,000 per share pre-split way back.
And that helps explain some of those huge moves that we saw in the ARK Innovation Fund, in the meme stocks. A basket of retail favorites surged around 20% within 1 or 2 weeks late in the quarter. And on top of that, a measure of out-of-the-money call options activity on stocks like the meme stocks, Tesla, Nvidia, Twitter, hit the highest level since early 2021. So we did particularly interesting. For the ARK Innovation Fund, the retail buys for that fund in March hit the second highest level on record and were well above 2021 averages. So, I think people are still tracking retail investor activity for clues on the market's next direction.
Buying in here, Scott. Matter of fact, it was trading right around $61. They bought 5,000 of the April 29th expiring 61 calls. So they're buying right on top of it. Now, there's a whole complicated spread that goes with that.
And you guys know that that's the one led by Cathie Wood. And you can see the distribution in which her positions have declined. You can see that the guys that were really highly valued are the ones that came down. And I would argue that a lot of them were highly valued. It looks like...
Sir, your second pick. First pick was the ARK Innovation Fund. Your second pick is...
Yeah, right here from number 10, last pick position in the go-kart back here. So here's what I'm thinking. I'm going to take something that has tremendous upside potential that has also been taken back behind the barn and shot, Moderna. And if you don't think...
Today already, but Cathie Wood with her ARK F, not the ARK Innovation Fund, but the FinTech Fund. That one's pretty interesting. It's hitting 52-week lows. Somebody who is already taking money off the table, they're selling one put and buying another one. They're actually buying the June 3rd expiring 20.5 puts. They bought 15,000 of those as well, Scott. So if we think
availability was getting better, now availability is getting better at a very fast rate. This is very Cathie Woodian actually right here. Availability going up at a faster rate means inventories are going up, right? This is your Cathie Woodian inventories. And it's something to pay attention to because that can actually lead to prices coming down if you have too high of inventories.
Of capital all she wants, but what she cannot refute is that her ARK Innovation ETF has lost its status as an outperformer against the S&P 500. Look, the inception of her fund back in 2014. Since that period, it's seen a net asset value gain of 127%. Now, for the same period, the S&P 500 stands at 136%. It's been an ugly period for tech as investors are nervous about frothy valuations. The ARK Innovation ETF has tumbled 70% from its peak last year. And what my next chart will show you, I'll break it down for our radio listeners. It plots the Goldman high valuation software basket against US 10-year Treasury yields over 1 year. And you can see last year the gap between the two was still wide as tech
3% before the bell. And of course, we've been paying attention to that ARK Innovation ETF, Cathie Wood's flagship fund. Yesterday fell to its lowest level since the beginning of April 2020. It's seen basically all of its pandemic gains absolutely eviscerated. A little bit of a rebound taking shape, though, this morning, Anna, up about 3% before the bell.
In January of 2021, when Cathie Wood was the king of the game, or the queen of the game, where she destroyed everybody else, and everybody said it is the next Warren Buffett. And my answer was that it is just a fund flows game, and she didn't lose her touch. She never had a touch. She just had money flowing into companies that have low liquidity, small ones, that she buy more and more of her names. And if you look at the Cathie Wood portfolio on Cheaper Than Guru, then you can see how, of course, Tesla, one outlier there, but she was buying, okay, Roku, and then we go into smaller and smaller companies where she managed by her buys and by promoting them to push those higher, and higher.
Innovation ETF. But fear not, there are some assets that are holding up nicely, even setting new records. Like, for example, 20th Century American Art.
100 million, 110 million, 110 million, 120.
This week, Andy Warhol's portrait of Marilyn Monroe, it's called Shot Sage Blue Marilyn, set a new record, going for $195 million.
2 times the daily exposure of ARK. Let's talk to its creator, Matt Tuttle, Managing Director of AXS Capital, AXS Investments. Mac, you have a successful launch of a short Cathie Wood ETF. 2 weeks ago, you launched that long ARK ETF. What's the motivation to have a long and a short ARK fund now?
Yeah, so, I mean, if there's one thing that people can agree on ARKK, is that it's going to move. You know, whether it's up, whether it's down, it's going to move.
There hasn't been another situation where an ETF has been created.
Now, each row is one company. The rows are ordered by the size of Cathie Wood's position in that company, and each
ARK Innovation has beaten the S&P 500, well, if you start on the 11th of May. But nevertheless, there is a pretty significant difference here between in the performance. If I could draw a vaguely straight line, you might see what I'm talking about. You know,
rather than investors yanking out cash. Now, the firm's flagship ARK Innovation ETF, ARKK, has plunged almost 55% this year, the second worst showing among its funds. It's currently higher by about half of a percent or so in pre-market trading. And don't forget, Bloomberg TV is actually going to have an interview with Cathie Wood herself later today, 1 p.m. Eastern time on ETF IQ.
I'm on the Bloomberg terminal. It's a down day in equity markets, but the ARK Innovation ETF is up 2.7%. Why is that?
I think it is seeping into the investor's mind is, wait a minute, are we right on this inflation call? They felt so right because supply.
Bloomberg terminal, it's a down day in equity markets, but the ARK Innovation ETF is up 2.7%. Why is that?
I think it is seeping into the investor's mind is, wait a minute, are we right on this inflation call? They felt so right because supply chain issues.
But the ARK Innovation ETF is up 2.7%. Why is that?
I think it is seeping into the investor's mind is, wait a minute, are we right on this inflation call? They felt so right because supply chain issues.
But the ARK Innovation ETF is up 2.7%. Why is that?
I think it is seeping into the investor's mind is, wait a minute, are we right on this inflation call? They felt so right because supply chain issues extended for such a long time. Then Russia
necessarily mirror crypto's losses and certainly the ARK Innovation Fund. People put their money into 20-year treasuries because they believe that money is safe, and you've seen a deterioration of bond prices over the last several months.
Market crash 10, 20 years from now. So they gotta study ARK Innovation and Cathie Wood and how these stocks traded at 20, 30, 50 times sales. But this person, Cathie Wood's ARK, the highlight of the bubble, all her 9 ARK ETF have posted double-digit losses in 2022. But as of recently, the lineup is still clinching a net inflow of 167 million. Those small caps or the Russell 2000 or even ARK Innovation is not going to perform well in this period, as most of their dependence is more on the local economy.
Now, if it is the kiss of death.
No end in sight for the downturn in ARK Innovation.
The Coinbase call was embarrassing.
It's not only been a matter of poor stock selection by Cathie Wood.
The act is there's nothing wrong. She's awful.
Since the start of April, Cathie Wood's funds have collapsed by another 30% or more.
By the way, ARK, for example, is up 20% this month. The ARK Innovation Fund, of course, of Cathie Wood.
Yeah, listen, I think from an equity standpoint, if the 10-year goes from 307 to 325, is that a problem? No, I don't think that's much of a problem.
You don't think so?
No, I don't think so. That's a de minimis
market, like a biotech or some of the sort of the ARK innovation names, et cetera?
So I think what you'll see then is you will have an inversion. You'll have the front end much higher than the back end. But I think at that point, the market's telling you that inflation expectations are going to be coming down, and we are nearing peak expectations.
Gold dollar yield point to deflationary forces, say Cathie Wood. So multiple articles, multiple speeches, multiple people putting it together. I absolutely agree with her. And I've said this many times, even before she started coming out and saying it. We are going to see a period of deflation that we haven't seen since the 2008, 2009 crisis.
That's more broadly. And a real poster child of that is the ARK Innovation ETF, Cathie Wood's flagship fund. We know it hasn't fared very well as of late, but it is enjoying that rally in early hours this morning, up about 3% before the...
Are you talking about Bed Bath & Beyond or AMC? Are you talking about ARK Innovation, which is up 6% today? Where are you going with that?
I think that, listen, I think the access to capital has changed meaningfully from the start of the year. I mean, at the start of the year, you could have gotten funding for like a ham sandwich. And I think...
Meme stocks, and I say that jokingly, the meme stocks rise, ARK Innovation ETF rise so sharply. That's the kind of trade that goes higher. Can you be in that sort of trade, Bonawyn?
The only solution is to trade it. I don't think it's like currently investable in this particular market. I understand
like technology, like I keep mentioning Cathie Wood's ARK Innovation Fund. The thing has just been enormous. It's 55% off of the lows it hit in June. I mean, we're talking 6 weeks here.
Only stock that ARK Invest has over $1 billion in across their combined funds. ARK Invest has been a big Tesla investor for years now, so the shares that she sold could be at a much higher profit than we realize. Cathie Wood.
But before we go and look at that, remember ARK Invest and Cathie Wood and their position with Zoom. I believe it's still probably the top 3 stock that they're holding. And remember when they came out with their investment thesis about Zoom and the price target it could reach in a couple of years? If you don't, should I remind you right here? So they actually let's say the high-end ARK ETF, the ARK Innovation ETF, might be, well, some question marks attached to it.
This most recent upset in the market. Now your ARK Innovation ETF in a bit of a slump, down nearly 60% this year. Tell me what you do in terms of hedging, if you can. For example, you've got...
Why is Maria get so loud? Oh my gosh, chill. Like, jeez.
And I'm dollar cost averaging. I believe this is a solid one in the ARK Innovation ETF that you can buy as an individual stock and hold for many years. I think it'll be profitable next year. And even if you're swing trading, if you hold this for 18 months, it could give you a great return, maybe even before then. Generally.
Trades that I piled into, for example, day trading, buying the ARK Innovation ETF, a lot of those trades that worked the past 2 years are no longer working. So even though we are seeing individual investors, buy the
retail trading of U.S. securities in billions of dollars, obviously went wild in Rona, and we're approaching back down to normalish levels. I mean,
now we're seeing those risks materialize, and Cathie Wood's funds are in the dumpster because the risks are materializing.
None of them had puts on ARK Innovation or, had none of that stuff. So again, this is a thing with investor sentiment. Are they bearish enough? And what are they really doing? I mean, if you look at them, they say, go buy an index fund or whatever. But again, you look at Bitcoin, it's still sitting at 18,000. Now, does that look capitulation?
Before we saw this extensive correction. So I look at the ARK Innovation ETF as one proxy. I also like the IWM, gives you a sense of small caps, the IWO kind of growth area of the small caps. And we can kind of see that these had a failed breakout. And then kind of from there's a little bit of a change in character. And that's really kind of when I noticed a lot of
the performance isn't there at all. So not very good from Cathie Wood there. Unfortunately, I'm really sorry, but there was too much exuberance and too much risk taken here. And
basket of unprofitable tech companies and, of course, the ARK Innovation ETF. This is, skeptics say, what happens when you throw billions and trillions of dollars of money into the system, just flooding it with cash, printing money, and you get this froth in assets. It's all come crashing down, obviously, and Bitcoin, the most recent to join its, I guess, brethren at ARK and the non-profitable tech.
My channel, you know them. The first one is ARK Innovation, and I believe ARK is not bottoming out, but it's finally starting to break down. I believe investors have given up on it. They don't have much hope around the high growth type of stocks. They don't want to touch them again.
Today, because it's back to risk on today, we have Cathie Wood's ARK Innovation Fund up 8% today with names that we haven't seen rallying in quite some time. But, it's been really like a very much a defensive income opportunity kind of market right now.
Crypto and all those crazy things that Cathie Wood did. And it's still not happened. So as we discussed a few months ago, the 50% to go more still isn't happening. And that's because something that I want to discuss also is the currency, the value of the currency compared to the stock market.
And I've seen some of it in the crypto market. I've seen some of it with ARK Innovation. A lot have given up on those stocks. Now they're getting excited again because they've been going up. But I've seen some of those signs with ARK Innovation, but I have not seen it, with the S&P 500 and with many of the large cap. We have not crossed the VIX above 40. Now there's all names, especially as ARK Innovation is trading at COVID lows. So in terms of investor sentiment, I believe it's very, very bad around growth stocks and the growth type of names. But ironically enough, they really loved them in 2021. And then in 2022, they don't want them anymore. And of course,